The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Sky. All the football you love in one place. Across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
This is News Talk.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Now you're up and along. Football Show is coming at you, so we are reflecting on last night at the Aviva Stadium. France won, Republic of Ireland 0. Netherlands were 3-0 winners against Gibraltar. So Group B, early doors of course, but Group B is France 2 from 2. They're on 6 points. Greece beat Gibraltar as well, so they're 3 points from 1. Netherlands beat Gibraltar. They are 3 points from 2. And Ireland, 1 game, 1 defeat is where we are on nil points. Alongside Gibraltar, who've played those 2 games thus far. We have plenty to get into. Gavin Cooney, the 42, is with us. Hello again.
How are you, Joe?
And Vinny Perth here in studio. Hello.
How are you, Joe? Oh, good.
So, like I said, much to discuss. The Irish approach, I'd be curious for your thoughts on, because this was a more pragmatic Stephen Kenny outlook. Bazunu in goal. We had Collins, Egan and O'Shea. We had Coleman and Doherty as the wing-backs. It was a midfield... let's call it a 4 of Malumbi and Cullen, with Ogbene over on the right hand side as opposed to partnering Evan Ferguson in any meaningful way, and Jason Knight more so on the left hand side, and Ferguson through the middle. And I would put it to you, Vinny, it looked like a very well drilled team defensively. They all had a very good sense of what they were trying to do, and even as the French picture changed at times, and in the stadium you can really see it change at times. Yeah. They had a good understanding of where they should be and what they were about, and there was a lot of hard work in there as well. So I'm curious if you felt that Stephen Kenny got the setup at least correct.
Yeah, I think tactically I thought we were excellent, really did, and it wasn't an overly shocked by that. So for a small bit of context, you got to remember Stephen went to Denmark and France in the World Cup, and that is the last team who played a back three against Ireland. So the only slight difference was Denmark played with I need to be careful how you explain these things, but similar shape, but they played 2 number 10s or a box in midfield. So we've done something similar with Chidozie on the right and Knight slightly off the left. So for that reason, and I remember speaking about that game and how we learned a lot from that, and how Denmark really were very good on the day. So tactically, that's how I thought he'd set up. And that's why I had an inkling, or my brain was saying he might try Smallbone in there as well as one of the 2 10s, so you could see that sort of that running power. But to be fair, Chidozie worked really well. And again, even going back to the World Cup final, which sounds crazy, if you look how much damage Argentina done in behind Mbappe, because you've probably seen it with anyone that was at the stadium, he plays high on the left and stands there literally. So in behind him, Hernandez is vulnerable to 1v1 situations, and we exploited that. So tactically, I think it's 10 out of 10 for the team and the staff, and they got at them. You would have liked to see a few more chances created on the back of that, but tactically we sort of really did nullify a lot of the French attacks, and Coleman's management of Mbappe, for example, was really good. So tactically, yeah, really good performance.
Overall impressions, Gav?
Would agree with that, yeah. I thought Ireland's setup was really good, because when you read Stephen Kenny's comments before the match and you're hearing stuff about this is not the chance, this is not the time to take a step back, you're wondering, well, what kind of freewheeling open football are we going to see at the Aviva, and how many goals will France score as a result? But Ireland were extremely disciplined, you know, like, so Mbappe didn't have a shot on target. But in one way, he completely dominated the game, because everything Ireland did was set up to, in Kenny's words, counter the counter-attack. So they did curb their attacking instincts. I think that there were times when Ireland could have played like a through ball. I remember one time in the first half, Nathan Collins set off and ran in behind the left back, but Ogbene never even looked at him. He was like, I'm going backwards here, because they were afraid of getting cut open. I think that's canny. I think that's pretty good. Ireland didn't set up just to defend. I think there was obviously like clear patterns of counter-attack. It reminded me actually the game away to Portugal back in 2021. So back then they had Connolly running at the space that was left by Cancelo. Last night they had Ogbene running at the space left by Hernandez.
the criticism is probably in the first half, especially Ireland didn't use the ball as well as they could, definitely counter-attacking wise. They didn't have enough down the left, I thought. We'll probably get into it in a little bit more depth, but I remember Kenny talking after the game against Latvia on last Wednesday of what O'Dowda can bring and how important his pace is. We need pace in the team, and that's, you know, he praised O'Dowda's rapid. So I thought he was missed a little bit, because there were times when Ireland actually played out kind of a French press there pretty well. You know, like O'Shea would pop it into Knight would drop off and spin these lovely, technical wise, really high quality balls out to the right. Just Doherty didn't have that, you know, explosive acceleration to take himself beyond whoever was covering. He did it once and got 2v2. He got up against Kanate, and Ferguson was free into his right, and then Kanate came across and intercepted it really well. So Ireland could maybe have exploited that a little bit better. But look, I mean, they had to be perfect if they're going to get something out of the game. They were very, very good, but sadly they weren't perfect.
Let's hear from Stephen Kenny. So this is his overall impression last night on the Irish performance.
I think, I do think France are the best team in the world, in my opinion, overall. And they lost the World Cup on penalties, but for us to win a game against the best, a team of that magnitude, we have to create a game, a few chances. We have to carry as much of a threat as we can ourselves, but we have to create, and that doesn't mean by just defending. That means by trying to control aspects of the game in the manner that we can, and having a cutting edge in our play to create chances. We would have liked more of a cutting edge in our attack and play in the first half than we had, but that's not easy. We've watched France's last 20 games. We've never seen Kylian Mbappe, who I voted for as the best player in the world, have such a quiet night. I've never seen it.
So, well, on that point on Irish possession, I'm sure it was very apparent on the television as well. I haven't watched the game back on TV, but in the stadium, the most threatening France felt was any time we had possession anywhere in their half. Every corner was an exercise in holding your breath and praying that the clearance did not fall to French feet, because there were numerous times, and there were a couple of last-ditch really good tackles, but there were times where they did start a counter and it looked really ominous. I can't overstate the air of threat that hung over any period in the game where Ireland had bodies forward ahead of the ball.
It's just Mbappe. Like, he's an existential threat rather than just a threat.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you just know if you're open, that ball goes behind you, you're gone. Yeah. You're dead.
So I am very accepting of the reticence of Ireland to build up and in a sustained way against France on the ball. Yes, you'd like to see more of it, but I mean, you're talking about the most devastating counter-attacking team in world football.
Yeah, and this is where the difficulty is. It depends on your view of last night's game. Is the glass half full or is it half empty? Because ultimately, as some people have said today, we've lost the game of football, and the only real threat on their goal was set pieces. So, there's previous managers being vilified for similar situations, and if we're going to get out of this group in any way, shape or form, we're going to have a big result against somebody. And I felt at the game that France weren't at their very best or anywhere near it, and it was an opportunity. And I think we lacked a couple of forward passes. There was one time just after the start of the second half where a ball came into Josh Cullen, and Evan Ferguson between two centre halves is pointing, put me in, and Cullen just went straight back. And that pragmatism in the game it's frustrating. I remember, and then I had to look around, and because again I was trying to be careful a little bit. Why, I don't know, but I was like, I sort of banged my hands against me hands and sort of went, make the forward pass. So there was frustrations like that. But again, you're looking at it going, we're playing against the best team in the world, so it is that fine balance. But you've got to take a risk sometimes, and risk and reward, and it's finding that really that balance. And ultimately, I think we haven't created enough chances for the home side, and that would be part of some people's criticism of the performance last night. So it is a half full or half empty on that performance.
Which side do you come down on? I'm
I'm probably right slam on the fence on it. I understand why they went the way they went. Again, I'll use one small example. I remember very clearly watching France tactically in the World Cup and being blown away with them. Remember Matty Cash for Poland had a brilliant performance, but and Mbappe didn't track him at right back. He puts a ball into the box. It's not the most perfect ball. It's cut out, and within 10 seconds, France have scored with Mbappe in behind Matty Cash cheating. So that's football at the very highest level, and that's where you see Coleman didn't offer any sort of attacking threat as a right wing back. And when you do that, you're probably going to struggle to win a game or have a big night.
My sense in the stadium was I was quite happy for Seamus Coleman not to offer an attacking threat.
Oh, I think so. I think he did really well against him. Look, he couldn't go galloping forward because you just get picked off. I mean, I'm always amazed at the trick that Deschamps pulls, because he's got the most talented squad in international football, stacked full of egos, stacked full of guys who are the most important players in clubs in the Champions League, and he manages to play in the counter-attack. Like, I mean, they averaged, I think it's a 51% possession of the World Cup. Like, 12 teams average more than them. Like, they're not that interested in having the ball. He manages to play in the counter all the time. So that was the game plan that Ireland were set up to counter. We'll go back to countering the counter-attack. I have to say I thought they did really well. You could say maybe, you know, the triple sub actually worked very well for Stephen Kenny, because there was a between about 60 minutes and about 75, I thought France kind of took over. They kept the ball really well. Ireland looked tired and couldn't really get near France. That triple sub worked well. Alan Brown coming on at right wing back, and then Ireland pushed on and created chances. Yeah. Maybe you could say, you know, that could come earlier in the game, but like, I think you have to be cognizant of what you're dealing with, and like, you know, it is Champions League against Championship if you look coldly at where the players play their club football. So it's always about managing that risk, and I do remember that Evan Ferguson chance, like, if that ball goes through, you know, there were people around us in the press box, in the crowd, quite angsty and frustrated about instances like that, and sometimes maybe Ireland did pick the safe pass to go backwards. But it's all about, you know, managing risk, etc. And ultimately, look, if Magno doesn't make a ridiculous save, you know, we're sitting here with a 1-1 draw, talking about how we got it right.
And that's the fine margin. That's why I use the Coleman as a good example. I take your point, stand in behind Mbappe for the night, but then you're taking, particularly if you're going to play wing backs on that 3-4-2 system, you're taking what is the biggest threat in that system is your wing backs. You're taking one of them out of it. It is a big blow to your attacking threat if you're going to do that. So it's a fine balance, isn't it? Like,
very.
But you were comfortable with it as a supporter watching.
Yeah, I was, and even, I mean, I genuinely, I don't watch the game as a supporter. I'm really just watching it through the prism of this job at this stage, and I can't overstate the extent to which Mbappe felt like a humongous threat at all times. And I would have said France were very poor last night by their standards. It was a pedestrian France. It was a France who felt they were always going to win the game. It was a France who had been very much focused on Friday night, and they were just at times going through the motions. And still, there were little flourishes from Mbappe which just let everybody know he's on a completely different level to everybody in this pitch. And even those times where I was saying France were at the beginning of a counter-attack, and he would come alive and he would start moving. I didn't watch it on TV, so I don't know to what extent he was in the picture. But I guarantee you that's where everybody in the stadium was looking, because he would start making his move, and he was doing it a damn sight faster than Coleman or Collins or wherever was near him. And I thought, like, this guy just needs a half a sniff, and he didn't get one. So, yes, I'm okay with that, because, and on the point about game management and going for it a bit earlier, my sense was, and the changes were on 77 minutes, where Doherty came off and McLean went on, and then Jason Knight came off and Mikey Johnston went on, and Darragh O'Shea came off, Brown went to right wing back, and Coleman went in as one of the centre backs. And then when Malumbi came off, it was Brown into midfield, Obafemi as right wing back. Let's discuss, was that aggressive enough? I would put it to you that 1-1 is still an amazing result for Ireland. And if you concede 2, we are not scoring 2, and we're certainly not scoring 3. So I think there's an argument that he pushed the envelope in so much as he could. Ireland got very on top with those moves, and they had really good chances. There was, of course, the Collins one, which is a miracle save. There was a Brown volley which goes across the goal and could have went in. There was the Ida, brilliant run. I mean, he was. We'll compare him and Ferguson in a moment. Brilliant run. The chance for McLean. It's a 3/4 chance. I think, to be fair to the manager there, you can say, well, I laid the foundations of this performance. We didn't concede in the first 20. We were very stable by half time, and we had chances late on. They could easily go in. On another night, you're saluting one of the great game management performances, holding a nerve, understanding the importance of 1-1. So yeah, I think you got to be really fair here. We have players in League One and Championship against this team.
And like Stephen Kenny said after the game, to give ourselves the best chance of winning, we had to make it a game of few chances, which they did. And look, the margins were very small. And I think one of the criticisms of the performance is when it's seen in the context of all of the previous games under this manager, is just like, the margins are small, but Ireland are always on the wrong side of them. And ultimately they're on the wrong side of them because Josh Cullen plays a bad pass. He plays it, and Pavard is bang on it straight away. And obviously it's yet another bloody goal from outside the box. Like, I mean, it's an extraordinary run now.
France had 11 efforts, 4 on target. Ireland had 11 efforts, 2 on target. XG, not that XG is we won't swear on the Bible here.
Yeah.
But it was France 0.83 was their XG. Ireland was 0.46. So again, there was a possibility here France could have run riot. And where would that leave the Kenny era? So what's the biggest criticism you would make of Kenny in terms of getting this team to attack more? Would you like him to have said to Seamus Coleman, take a chance?
No, I get that. So I'm trying to be balanced and say where Ireland ultimately lost the game. So that has to be if you were playing that game again tomorrow, you would like to say, how do we not? Okay, it's very easy to say, okay, Cullen doesn't give away the ball, but France ultimately scored, and you'd like to think they did control the game for a long period. So how do we have a couple more attacks? So as a coach, the easiest thing to do in football is set up defensively. Now, it's very, very difficult against one of the best teams in the world, of course. So the hard part is, and where the best managers make their money, is coming up with solutions, whether it's Pep putting Cancelo in midfield, or Philip Lahm over the years, or Klopp, or whoever. So it is about that balance in terms of Seamus Coleman, as I said, the odd time stepping out and putting the ball into the box and we score off a cross, or it's about making more forward passes. I felt that we could have made more forward passes on the night. The best example is the Josh Cullen one into Evan Ferguson, but we didn't make enough forward passes, and because what France caught us out tactically, and the staff, I would imagine, because they came with a high press. Normally it's what they call a mid block, but if you look at our goal kicks, they had 3 across the line off the edge of the box and didn't let us out overly comfortably. And our distribution from the back wasn't great at times. It's sort of being missed in the result. There was a lot of times where Bazuna was kicking it to either full back, and it was a 50-50 header as a restart. So we didn't get out overly easily. So I would say, to force France back when it comes into Cullen, he's got to take it on the back foot and then pick out a night in that sort of half position between, they call that breaking the lines, or into Ogbene again or into Ferguson, who bounces off to someone. So we didn't make enough forward passes. But I'm sounding critical of the team. As I said, I was really happy, and it was really unlucky performance, but that's how the manager would probably look at that and say, if we were to play that game again this weekend, that's how we take our team to the next level.
Yeah, I'm not sure that this team has it in them just yet to make those forward passes. And I think it would be naive on Kenny's part to ask too much of them. I would agree on your point on the left-hand side. So it was very obvious what the Ogbene plan was.
Yeah.
And it worked.
And it was very effective.
It worked very well. I would say if there's a criticism, if we're setting up that way, where it's very much Knight on one side and Ogbene on the other, and Ferguson as a lone striker, the Coleman-Ogbene dynamic worked. I would say I was a bit more confused as to what Doherty and Knight were trying to do. Knight does not have the physical attributes to do what Ogbene is doing. And I would think, given that setup, I mean, it's a lot to throw Mikey Johnson in and say, get on the ball and dribble and run at your man. Yeah. I think there's an argument. You could say to James McLean, instead of Knight, you do what Ogbene is doing. You have the athleticism to do that, and we'll get more out of the left-hand side. Whether that's the answer or not, I would put it to you both, and Gav, you can expand on your point. The left side offered very little, bar Doherty's really good run in the first half, where he held off two players, and you know that was just a moment, and he reacted.
There wasn't enough pace down the left hand side. And look, I thought, to be fair, I thought Doherty did fine. I thought he defended pretty well. Like Colm Moani will be sold for €100 million in the next 18 months. Like
and the quality of his running behind Doherty,
serious player, you know. And Griezmann was drifting over to that side, so it was a very difficult job defensively that Doherty did well. And it's not necessarily his fault that he doesn't have the explosive pace to run down the line. Plus he's right-footed, so he's always going to check in. But Ireland, like, there were times that they played out, and Knight did really well to drop off. He'd pull Pavard toward him, then pop around the corner, and then if Ireland just went, like if Doherty could go, like if they had O'Dowda, he's got pace, he's left-footed, so he's just going to drive down the line. Then all of a sudden you're into space, and you can draw. Well, Canady's going to come across, so where's Ferguson? Like,
get moving then.
Yeah, and then O'Benny's going to come in off the right wing.
It was one exceptional Knight flick with the outside of his right foot. I mean, it was
really good.
Difficult and judge it to perfection. And I thought that was on 18 minutes, and I thought, okay, a bit more of that, and I can see Knight releasing Doherty is how this works. Whereas the other side, it was Coleman saying, "Yeah, you're not going to release me, Chidozie. I'm going to boot it up to you." But I don't know, that left hand side, we can't sacrifice an entire wing.
Yeah, there's two things to it. One is, if you remember in the first half when Ferguson went down the side and he crossed the ball into the box and there's no one there, that's Knight vacating a space to create space for Ferguson to run down the side. So where that sort of system works is, it's great when there's two up front, because
there's someone to come in.
To come in. So Knight comes in and Ferguson goes in. And the other thing on Knight,
maybe the fault there is Ogbene. You should have been there.
Yeah, well, Ogbene was on the other side, so effectively it was Ferguson's job to run that channel, but he was doing so much work dropping into midfield, you just couldn't do that.
He was hanging out with Mbappe and Coleman.
And the key to Knight and what he done is probably the challenge. I think Knight is best coming onto a ball, so he's not that number 10. I'm saying breaking the lines, that's not his best position. So if you look at all the good things he's done, or you look at Jamie McGrath's performance away in Portugal, who've done the same job, but Jamie's better at receiving the ball with his back to goal or under pressure, and Knight is a different type of player. And look, hindsight's a wonderful thing. It'd be wrong to be critical of. I thought the manager tactically got a spot on, but remember, Knight doesn't receive the ball well with back to goal, and he played that position better if it was against a team where we were more dominant. So he's coming on almost Frank Lampard style, arriving in the box, that's where he's at his best. Where McGrath's touch, honestly, it's exceptional under pressure. People don't realise how good it is. And I thought coming into the game, McGrath had a real shout of playing, and I'm surprised he didn't. But McGrath receiving that ball in there would have given us much more of a platform. But they're small margins, but that's the difference between them two type of players, and it's probably why I felt Knight was the one player in the whole system that probably didn't suit to our tactical setup.
Didn't think so.
And just last thing on this year, like that lack of pace down the left meant that Pavard didn't have to worry what was behind him. So like obviously Theo Hernandez wasn't going to push right up on Coleman, etc., because he's terrified of Ogbene's pace over his shoulder. But Pavard didn't have that worry, so he could push right up. There was one point in the first half where he won a throw-in that I think was an Irish throw-in, to be honest, off O'Shea, almost right up at the end line. And Pavard is actually the furthest forward, the French player that's furthest forward. And like, this might be correlation rather than causation, but like, Pavard is pressing high for that goal. You know, he's the one that's jumping in and winning the ball on the edge of Ireland's box. Again, look, maybe those two things aren't linked, but Doherty and Knight, they're gone on the counter. But again, and look, Pavard has the luxury of having Kanate to cover that space behind him, because he's really good at covering space out wide. You know, all of Trent Alexander-Arnold's worst games for Liverpool have come when Kanate has him in there. You know, he's really good at covering all that space. So Pavard might have left it anyway. But just think of, at Ireland, a little bit more pace down that side, giving Pavard a little bit more to worry about going back the way. You know, again, maybe it's correlation and not causation, but maybe he's not quite as high for the goal.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying the technical ability of McGrath. Jamie's not overly quick, but the technical ability may have been our pace. It's one or the other, but Knight was sort of caught in between both, and that's probably the one area where we may have got it wrong, or in hindsight Stephen may make a different decision in that position.
Yeah. What did you make of the midfield too? Josh Cullen pass aside, and Malumbi now fist pumping to the crowd. Jason Malumbi.
I think you get a certain quota of fist pumps to the crowd every game. I think maybe Malumbi went over his quota.
The one when
he was excellent
when he won the foot race with Wani. When again there's the threat of a counter attack and he gets the free just before half time.
Yeah.
It was a well-timed fist pump. I thought brought the crowd nicely into.
I thought he was really good.
He was really good.
He was really disciplined. He broke up play very well. He read it very well. He was snapping into balls even ahead of Mbappe. I remember the first half there was one, like a lot of Ireland's first half attacks were like line breaks in rugby, like, and he made one of them where he jumped in ahead of Mbappe, then off he went and somehow got pinged for a foul on Camavinga as Camavinga was making the tackle. He read the ball, he read play really well. Again, sometimes maybe his passing was backwards maybe a little bit too often. There's sometimes when the ball came into him and he could, turn and move forward rather than turn and move back. But
does he have that in his locker?
I don't know. Maybe, he's more in his locker than I thought he did. So maybe you'll be better place to talk about it. But I think maybe he can develop it. But
does he have it in his locker against France under those stakes?
I'm not sure I'm better judge, but what I will say is he, for me, Chidozie got man the match from an Irish perspective, rightly so.
Yeah.
He, for me, played like what you would typically associate with Ireland in terms of, right, we're playing against a top seed one nation, and it was blood and guts, and he was bloody impressive.
I totally agree. And for me,
I loved his performance.
That's been missing from this team too much for me in the last year. Actually, I understand the focus that Stephen Kenny has, and I agree with it. And like on the whole, there were times I was watching the game and I loved the respect that Ireland had for the ball last night, even if they weren't necessarily picking France apart. But I would have felt the last couple of months, where is the Malumbi performance?
And you're seen as a dinosaur if you mention, as a coach, if you mention blood and guts and thunder and all of that stuff. You're seen as a bit of dinosaur, and if you shout squeeze and press and all that stuff. But then when someone like Atletico Madrid coach, his name's gone out of my head, Simeone does it. Oh, it's brilliant. No, we are battling against somebody that's better than us, and it needs that. And I thought Nathan Collins had a couple of moments where he was trying to get the crowd up and all that stuff. But I thought Malumbi set a real tone for us in midfield against. I thought, I was disappointed in France, but if I took anything away from watching France, their midfield three, like Griezmann is just like the pink hair aside, he is just he's just poetry in motion. And by the way, the two of them tackle each other. Do you remember it?
Yeah,
that was just brilliant.
He's brave. I love the pink. I mean, Griezmann's pulling that pink hair off.
Oh, he is. Yeah,
I did see Paul Rowan made the very good point that Griezmann's hair is the same colour as Stephen Ireland's old Range Rover, and no one is talking about Griezmann getting carried away with himself.
But yeah,
there's a thesis in that, isn't there, somewhere?
I think so.
So good. Like, it's weird. I had the thought simultaneously. They're really going through the motions here. Jeez, they're so good though.
Yeah, you're very down on France. I was quite impressed by. I didn't think they were as bad. I honestly would compliment Ireland for a lot of what they did. Like, I mean, there was a load of French passes that kind of went out of play, which is a little bit overcooked.
There were.
So I'm thinking, are France not at it, or are Ireland just forcing them to kind of try and play a perfect pass? Because there's one very small moment just before half time. It's Rabiot, just inside off the left touchline, plays a ball in behind for Hernandez, who's on the overlap. But he can see that Ogbene has matched Hernandez stride for stride.
Yeah.
Like, Ogbene was so good going back the way.
He was.
And so Rabiot puts more on it just because he's to take Ogbene out, and it way overcooks it over the end line. And Coleman then grabs Ogbene and gives him, well done, pal.
The counter argument to that is, if the weight of that pass is spot on, I still think he gets in.
Yeah.
And France were just off a little bit, but they were still brilliant to watch. It's like that midfield three. Every so often, the Camavinga's just stopping the ball. There you go. And he was. It's almost like people use the terms like real football terms. He played in his slippers or his Rolls Royce and all of these lazy comments, but it makes sense when you watch someone like Camavinga live. Like, he's just, everything is controlled, and you didn't feel he overly broke sweat in the game, and that's the thing about the French team. You'd love to see them. I would have loved to see them Friday night as opposed to what we seen.
Feel in the dressing room afterwards as they're taking off their boots and turning to each other and saying, "What you make of that?" I think they'll say, "We were a bit shit, but it was fine."
Yeah, maybe by their own standards. And look, it's, they've played Friday and played Monday, and Ireland had the benefit of effectively a week off. I still thought, obviously not everyone played well. Like, Giroud kind of did nothing. Rabiot wasn't great. But obviously Mbappe was shackled really well. But I thought Colomani was very good. Camavinga was brilliant. Griezmann was brilliant. I thought Konate was good. Obviously Pavard was very good and got his goal. Hernandez had a bit of a nightmare. And obviously the goalkeeper made the difference in the end. I thought France, obviously, not at their top level. But I wouldn't write it. I wouldn't be labouring the point that they were poor, and as a result, Ireland stuck with them. I think Ireland frustrated them.
I'm simultaneously saying they were also like so full of quality, and I thought Ireland scrambled really well when they had to. And, you know, the counter attack was potentially on. They nipped those in the bud so well, and we were all obviously very worried about the counter attack.
But Coleman on that. I didn't think, people have said, I've heard people say Coleman was brilliant and really good, and I thought he grew into the game, but his distribution at times was quite poor. A lot of those balls where he tried to find Chidozie. But that aside, his management of Mbappe was brilliant. Where there was, when Mbappe was receiving it back to goal, he went in after him, particularly early. But when Mbappe had the ball on the half turn, he stayed like sort of 3 yards away from him and said, "Okay, come on, knock it past me," and he did. And Mbappe's quick enough still to beat him, but then Coleman used his body to get in front of him, and then it was just brilliant from him in terms of his management of him.
Experienced of managing.
A lot of people were talking about you need experience for this game, and to be fair to Coleman, he summed it up where there's times where you'd want him to be a little bit better on the ball, but he managed that really well.
And in fairness, to go back to your point that they didn't play enough forward passes, and some of his distribution wasn't great in the first half, he did play one great pass in the second half with his left foot in behind the defence. And Jason Knight, I don't know, maybe didn't think he was going to get there, or maybe just ran out of energy.
A French player should have intercepted it and surprisingly let it go, and
maybe
then
that
it opened up.
It was a really good idea, like it was a really good pass.
I think that's why Knight stopped running though. He was like, "Oh, why didn't you just stick your foot in?"
No, he was excellent. And just imagine how exhausting it is from a concentration point of view to be used to watching Mbappe all day. Like, I mean, Kyle Walker did it in the World Cup quarter-final and went over the halfway line once and goal.
I have to say, I thought the concentration was like palpable from the Irish team, and didn't really waver, and that's what fear can do to you. Let's take a very short break. There's more to talk about. Didn't touch on Evan Ferguson at all, for instance. So Vinny and Gav are staying with us. Back in just 1 second.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, all the football you love in one place. Across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
This is News Talk.
Now you're welcome back. So football show coverage brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. We have Gavin Cooney and Vinny Perth with us. Headphones in for a second. Just if for a moment you're wondering how the French are talking about this, as we torture ourselves over every granular detail about the left-hand side. Here is Frank Leboeuf, World Cup winner. He's World Cup winner, isn't he? Yes, he is. He is. If ever for a second you thought Frank has a healthy respect for himself and for top players, and maybe not as much regard for the smaller types, here is Frank's analysis of the game last night, the crucial goal in particular, and France's setup. Just have a listen.
But he tried, Colomwani wasn't at his best. Mbappe didn't seem to be good as well. It's only defensively what they did pretty well. They were lucky to score the goal because of a bad pass from some Irish guy.
Shocking. He literally watched it for 90 minutes and probably saw several replays of the goal.
Hell.
This is what we're dealing with. We're honestly a dirty stain on the footprint of our
we've long been disrespected, Joe, as we've all been only too happy to internalise. So we can play Frank Leboeuf now before September whenever we're going to France.
The Revenge of Cullen. Give us a word on Evan Ferguson before we look ahead to the remaining games in this group. Did Stephen Kenny say in the press conference he was a touch deep as the game went on?
Yeah, he was almost too honest in coming a little bit deep, and maybe he was. He struggled. I thought he did a couple of good things, Ferguson. He ran in behind early on, and I thought he struggled physically against Canada and Upamecano at times. Was quite isolated as well, and then looked gassed when he was coming off. So it was a tough night for him, and I thought Ida actually made more of an impact when he came off the bench.
Like Ida had a real presence, and his run to get up and get that ball on the left hand side and just have the composure to little pass inside to McLean. It's very promising. Like, Ida's been out for 10 months. And you think of Portugal away, that was a real coming of age night for him. There's still something there with Ida. What would you say about both, Vinny?
Difficult one. Speaking about Evan, because I was close to home. Me and his dad are probably best friends, and would have spent a lot of time with Evan as a kid growing up and would know him so well. Felt difficult. I suppose if I'm being honest and defending them, saying he was so isolated. It was the lack of quality up to him. You compare Evan to what he plays like in Brighton. He's got Matoma and Solly March going this way, and he does drop in. That is, what I said at the Latvia game with Richard Dunn and Sean St. Ledger either side of me, and the two things both of them have remarked on: Evan's movement is sensational. Both of them have really stressed that was the big thing for them, and how difficult it would be. And they're not too bad judges of played at decent level.
I think he was unfortunate in that, one, he was isolated. He did have a very good moment where he held off two players around the centre circle first half and gave it to Irish player, won a free. But anytime he might have even had his foot on the ball, Ogbene was too deep, Knight wasn't making runs in behind. So if he was to try and turn and get his head up and maybe play a forward pass, there was no one to play it to. So invariably it was back into Cullen or Malumbi, who went sideways and backwards. And that's the conservatism that we're
But a lot of the good stuff he does for Brighton when he comes in is about a pass into his feet, a quick pass, and it can be from the dunk. Does a lot of time straight into him, and it's runners from midfield.
Yeah.
But also remember, you go back to Konate when he played against Liverpool. I vividly remember him. He came in to show for feet. Konate came in after him, and it was Matoma who went, and that's where Trent was criticised, and it was a brilliant ball in behind. So he does all of these different things that is brilliant on the eye, but the other night he didn't have anyone beyond him. So therefore it's very easy. Konate came in after him a lot of the game, and the two of them got into a battle. So I felt for him a little bit in the game. He'd done some really good things. The first half he went down the side when Knight had left that space, and he whips a decent ball in, no one in the box. But and then again, I'm defending Evan by saying this. When Ida came on, I think the game had opened up a little bit as well. But I thought Ida came on and was excellent. And you'd love to know, could the two of them ever play together?
Well, so to that point, and your glass half empty, glass half full analogy, I think we'll remember this game in accordance with how the rest of the campaign goes. This will look like a very good first step and a fairly decent effort against excellent opposition and an understandable conservatism, or this could play into we're not creating enough chances and we didn't all campaign. So let's look ahead. Ireland set up last night not to concede, to try and stay in the game. Stephen Kenny said that. I think we're all in agreement that that's a very fair way to set up. Now, against Greece, the crucial one, and even against Netherlands, if we feel they're not as scary as France, which they're not, Ireland are going to have to create more and get on the ball more and can't just have a rearguard action. So how confident are we in that situation?
Away to Greece, I mean, not massively. I would like, does anyone, is there has the team done enough under Stephen Kenny so far to say we can be very confident of going there and winning? I don't think so. Like they've not. The obvious parallel is Armenia last year. There's very specific challenges for Ireland in this game. The weather probably won't help. It will be warm, but it's 6 weeks after the end of the championship season. Those players will be rusty. And I know they'll do a camp in Bristol for a few days, and they're going to go to Turkey for 10 days and have a bounce game behind closed doors, and then go to Greece. Well, the players will be rusty. So that's a massive challenge. What I would say is maybe Smallbone showed against Latvia that maybe he can add a little bit more penetration to Ireland against these sides that will sit off and invite Ireland to attack a little bit more.
And do you think, say, as opposed to last night's setup, will we have a genuine partnership up front?
I would say so, yeah. I'd say the 3-5-2 that started against Latvia will probably be, look, lots can change between now and then, but that's probably how he will go, unless with kind of Ferguson and say Obafemi, or Ferguson and Ida. You wouldn't rule that out either. And with Smallbone, roving in behind and linking well with Doherty as we saw against Latvia. The wild card is maybe Mikey Johnston. Can you get him in the team? Then maybe you bring him in maybe instead of Smallbone, just judging this isn't the team that played Latvia. But we walked out of the ground last night. I walked out with Malky Clerkin, and the first thing he said was, well, that doesn't matter if they don't go and beat Greece. And I think that is partly what people feel, but at the same time, there's such different games. Ireland can be, there's a lot of encouragement to take from that performance against France, but at the same time, is there enough to suggest you can now go away from home to a side who've only lost once at home in 2 years, and it was a 1-0 loss to Spain, and go and beat them? The team has to prove they're capable of that.
But that's where the glass half full, half empty is. Yeah. I'm not going to promise I won't say it again. I've probably said it too much, but it is on the context of the group where you see so many managers under pressure have a really good performance, but it's lost if it's not backed up, say, in club football the following week or whatever. So that's where we probably feel like we're still searching for our best team because people like, you know, Mikey Johnson or Smallbone, who I think the world of. I think I spoke to a scout recently from a Premiership club, and he thinks Smallbone is right on that sort of periphery where someone might, he is with Southampton but he's on loan, where somebody might just come along and give him that, and he probably needs to improve on his explosive power at the highest level, and he's someone who could go on to another level. He can play in a 10, but he's not our 10 or typical Wes Houlihan type 10, but he can play in that role where he can make a lot of runs, and we've seen it against Latvia, and we're sort of feels like, I don't think Stephen would admit to this, but it feels like we're probably still searching for that perfect team at the moment, and we're probably not just there yet at the moment. And that's where, like, for example, I give you someone like Alan Brown isn't ahead of Seamus Coleman in any people's head, but if Alan Brown, who plays week in week out at Preston, and Irish fans don't tend to watch a lot of Championship football, plays a lot as a wing back, does goals in Alan Brown, and maybe we have to look sometimes and say, for this game, it's Alan Brown as a wing back. If you remember, he got a goal against Scotland, and he's someone who you feel like there's a goal threat, and we might have to make decisions like that where if we're going to stick to this system, which I'm not sure about against the lesser nations, then it's got to be O'Dowd and say Alan Brown as wing backs, and that's how you become more of an attack minded team. That's going against the grain a little bit in terms of people's thinking, because on paper Doherty and Coleman are ahead of them. That's where we've got to be a little bit cleverer now.
Because you did make the point on AM that you expected in advance Ireland to do a good job against France and be solid and attentive and full of work rate, and so it transpired. But you were adding in, now they have to go and beat teams and create chances and not concede silly goals with a more with a less conservative setup as well, you know, because that you feel like those silly goals are still lurking a touch when Ireland have to be more creative.
Yeah, it's like the goal from distance. I think that's become a bit of a story, and the thing about it is, we know what happened. Josh Cullen makes a misplaced pass, and Pavard is brilliant at that strike from distance. So it's just in isolation that just happens to be. But in 2 years' time, or 4 years, or hopefully 6 years' time, when we're reviewing Stephen Kenny's tenure, there may be a chapter in that's about conceding goals from distance, because it is a bit of a team, and you've got to, it is, and not beating some of the lesser nations may become something that's another chapter. So we're at that crossroads in a lot of where we're going, and I obviously hope Stephen goes straight through that and takes this team to a major championship, and they all involved with him. But we are at that crossroads, and it's difficult for me to say that, but there is a couple of trends there where we've lost to lesser nations and we haven't put them away, and we've got to fix that. And that's where this game in the summer is a crucial game. I think Ireland have got to win it. Different country, but similar. We went to Larnaca in Europe, and it was mid-30s. They played the game mid-afternoon, and it's the only time in 10 years with Dundalk we've ever been really well beaten by anyone. We were beaten 4-0 I think on the day, and I've never experienced it, but it's the first time I've went, wow, that's what real heat is in football. Because obviously from Ireland and all that stuff, never really played in that heat. I wasn't playing, but the point I make is it's different, and we're going to have to be so slow, so problematic in terms of different things, because it's going to be mid-30s, and it's a really difficult game, our next one. And that's where the context of the French game and then the next game is really crucial for Ireland in terms of how this campaign is perceived.
It's so strange, Joe. Like, last night proved that Ireland will be able to compete with the Dutch in a one-off game. What they have to prove is that there's something that they're able to have something on the line when that game comes around.
And sorry for going on about it, but you take all the old pros who get a bit of criticism, or some of the old managers, they would say to you, well, we've always done well. I mean, we've gone to Russia and got a result. We've beaten Italy. In many ways, they're the easy games. It's when the money's on the table when you've got to beat teams around you. Otherwise, you won't qualify.
And take the initiative.
Yeah.
And are you glass half full or glass empty on that question, based on what we've seen thus far?
I'm still backing this man. I fully believe in him. I think he's the right man to lead us. I think he's done a huge amount of heavy lifting with this team. I just hope and pray that I'm not looking at someone else taking these young players to a major championship. I hope I'm not. But they've got to win games, and we're not winning enough games at the moment, and I don't believe we're attacking enough. Like, it wasn't a bums off seats night last night, was it, that game? From it was exciting in terms of the tension, but we're probably not creating enough chances at the moment in our style of play.
No, and my reservation, and you parked last night because last night is not the night where you're going to outplay France. My reservation of late, Gavin, you can give us your sense, is that too often, increasingly of last year, I'm watching too many performances where the possession is very polite, and the opposition are standing there saying, away you go. It's not hurting enough.
Yeah.
And that is a trend which you would love to see eliminated ASAP. And how optimistic are you that Ireland will start hurting teams more often, as well as keeping the ball and showing?
I'd be hopeful. Like, there's not a lot to ground it on. And look, caveat by saying that Latvia are not a good team. Like, Ferguson is up there now. Like, I mean, his hold of play is good. I mean, Ireland haven't had someone up to whom they can give the ball and it will stick since probably David McGoldrick. Ida does it on occasions, but in terms of bringing other players into play and making everyone look better around him, I think Ferguson has that talent that McGoldrick had, and obviously Ferguson has a much higher ceiling in all other aspects of being a striker, and definitely Smallbone. I really think Smallbone added so much.
That's a good point. I mean, in defence of Kenny, you could say, well, he's been crying out for a replacement for McGoldrick, somebody you can fire a ball into, and you can have people run behind, and you can. That's such an extra piece of arsenal. So, but you need to turn around, kid, by the summertime. You know, like, it's funny, even Evans Ferguson, like, on the cover of the programme last night, I mean, bloody hell, you would really like if, as a football nation, we weren't as desperate for this guy to be ready to go and take that mantle. But it, you know,
but we are.
but the other thing about it was, you take the Latvia game, I think, I don't know the percentage, but a lot of people came just to see him as well. They got off their sofa and said, I want to see this kid. So it is exciting. The only thing I'll say is I looked at the programme last night and went, I didn't need to put him on the cover.
No.
But when you know him, like, nothing phases this kid, and I don't know whether it has phased him, the build up to the game, because only he'll be able to answer it. I can't see inside his brain, but the guy I know, or the kid I know, it for whatever reason, nothing in life phases him. So I think he was okay in that sense. But the other big thing, and we won't go into loads of detail, we're relying on a lot of players who are in and out of teams at the moment to have a lot of football over the next 6 months. And there could be a Springer, throw a name in. Like, we haven't had a number 10 since Wes. Andy Moran at Brighton is in around the first team. That kid is ready to do the business if he gets the break at the club, and if he got the break at the club, it would be huge for us. So we're right on the periphery of doing something, and it's that little last push we need, and a couple of things to go away.
There is this nagging sense that next man in is going to inherit a side in a great place.
In fairness, like, Stephen Kenny has done I think an outstanding job in building a squad.
So do I.
Like, I mean, like, there's a whole generation of basically lost players there. You know, after, say, the underage team that John Egan and Matt Doherty played in, it took them 3 or 4 years to be capped after the end of at under 21 level. There's only really kind of Cullen and Ogbenny in and around that 25, 26-year-old mark, and then everyone else is so young. I mean, okay, the FAI did make the point, the Latvia team at an average age of something like 23 and a half, which is very young. So I think he's done a very good job in building up depth, and we can now have arguments about who should play here. And there are options. Okay, there's not a huge variance between the players, but there are options there that weren't there beforehand. So he's done a great job in building a squad. And like you say, it would be it would be quite sad if you're in 10, 15 years' time, if you're looking back and saying, well, Stephen Kenny built a great squad and someone else benefited from it. So,
like, that back three, I mean, enjoy the next 12 years, everyone, because they're bloody good together.
Yeah, and then you've got Ahmed Bambadeli to step in. Like, they're really good. And like Kenny always spoke with kind of puzzlement. It's just like, why did it take John Egan so long to get a cap? Why did it take Matt Doherty so long to get a cap? You know, so from that point of view, I think he's done a really great job. And like, Ogbenny was man of the match last night. You know, would any other Ireland manager have picked this guy? Like, he knew him from the League of Ireland. And they worked with him and they targeted him like, this is the role we see for you in our squad, and it's worked really well.
I suppose people like Martin O'Neill would say, yes, we have picked players like that before, but it was a changing of the guard as well. So the timing was suited for this change, in fairness. There was a lot of people coming towards the end of their career. Like, we talk now about this great back three or four that we have, really great centre halves, but we have relied on Duffy up until recently, and probably still will be playing him, only for his club form has fallen off a cliff. So it is inevitable young players come into international setup, particularly for a nation like for Ireland or Scotland or Wales, generally come through. But he's probably given, Bazunu would have came into the Irish team over Randolph, for argument's sake, but he probably sped that up by 6 months, meaning that he's, instead of having 5 or 6, 10 caps now, he's getting closer to that 20 mark. And so there's been a huge amount of heavy lifting done, and I really hope he's the one that gets the fruition of it. But as the old pros keep saying in their own way, got to win matches, got to win games of football. And as much as last night it was tactically brilliant, we're still on 0 points.
No, it's not the defining night of this campaign.
No.
So that's where we are. We are pretty much out of time. Our football show coverage brought to you by Sky, all the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. Gavin Cooney, damn you, enjoy the Masters.
I'll do my best.
I can't even look at him. Vinny Perth.
He's actually gone to the Masters.
He sure is. Sorry, all expenses paid. He's working. He's working.
Yeah, apparently so, yeah.
Disgusting. Thank you very much, Vinny. Thank you.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, watch every single live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
This is News Talk.